Good morning everyone and welcome to the show. Today we have this gorgeous Toyota Tundra with that wonderful factory system in it and that gorgeous touchscreen in the dash. Let's be honest, these things sound like crap and that radio isn't so special. What we're doing today is we're gonna go ahead and pull everything out of this car and we're gonna go with a Kenwood 994 in the dash and a bunch of Rockford stuff everywhere else. So the truck has already been here for about, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes. We've done a little bit of work on it. We had to do some prep work. This is the box right here. The customer had us order them this box. It's a 212 box. We're putting two Rockford P3 shallow mount woofers in it. This is the box brand here. It came with these little pieces of bumpers right here that were supposed, I don't know what they were, but we had to cut those off because as you can see, the woofer wasn't gonna fit in the box otherwise. Anyways, enough of that. So in the back here, this is where we've already pulled the back seat. We had to test fit the box, make sure it fits. We're gonna pull this guy off here because as you can see, it makes a lot of noise. We're gonna roadkill that, but from the inside because we really need all the room we can get to fit that box in here. There's a factory amplifier up underneath this seat. Even though this is the base model system, it still has a crappy factory amplifier. We're gonna go with two little Rockford Power Series amplifiers. We have the 404, we have the 751. Both of these should fit underneath that seat, no problem. We'll make a custom mount for that. For speakers, we're going with a set of Power Series T16s and T2652 S's components in the front doors, in the tweeter, and the dash. So the plan right now is to go ahead and get this door off. Fernando's getting ready to get started on that. I'm gonna go next door and flash the module, then I'm gonna come back and finish getting this. This is just mocked up right now. These woofers aren't actually wired up, so I wanna wire that up so it doesn't bite us in the butt at the end of the day when we need to throw that in. Oh, then I'll get the radio out. We'll work through the day and try to stay out of each other's way. We're gonna go ahead and get started on that. Fernando's gonna go ahead and pull the door panel off. Before he does that, let's take a look at these speakers that we're gonna put in it. Inside the top of the box, you get two huge passive crossover networks, these guys here. Now these are bi-ampable, meaning that you can run a power for the tweeter and the mid-range and an output for the power and the mid-range. You could do a 4-channel amplifier just on these if you wanted. And then on the outside you have switches for plus or minus 2 dB and then also on axis, off axis, which we'll talk about more later once we get these into the car. You have the two tweeters, of course, these little guys right here. It is a metal tweeter, so it is going to be nice and bright. And then we have the T2 mid-range right here. Very nice looking, decent sized magnet. It is a wide basket. The way Rockford builds these things is very wide. There is a 6x9 in the front door that this is going to take the place of. So we are going to have to do some kind of brackets if we don't have one. We may not, I don't know. So, but this will fit with no problem because there is a 6x9 there. Let's join Fernando as he starts getting the door apart and getting these guys in there. We are going to do roadkill and fast rings also. So to install the front speakers, Fernando's going to use the Metra 82, 81, 47 adapters. Now there's two in a bag obviously, and what you need to do, because this is an oversized 6.5, is go ahead and break off these little tabs and the speaker fits right in. Fernando's finishing up the passenger front door. We're doing the last final thing, which is put on the fast ring. Now, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with these are designed to help couple the speaker with the door panel, so it pushes all that dynamic energy out. There's also a couple parts that go behind it to focus the energy back into the acoustic plug, is what they call it. We've added the roadkill, as you saw. Now all he's got to do is get this guy on here, get the door panel back on. Once he gets that done, I can remove the seat. So for the rear doors, like we said, we're going with the T116s. Now these come with a cool 6x9, 6.5 plate. A lot of Rockfords do come with this. Inside the box, we get a nice 6.5. Tweeter is fixed, decent sized magnet, and like we said, that basket, that's that Rockford basket, has this round fatness to it. One of the reasons it's designed like this is because they like to hide passive crossovers inside of here for like the tweeter and the mid-range, and also the component series and the punchline. So for installing the rear speakers, we're using the BK TSB 920 mounts. As you can see here, they bolt into the factory bolts. Speaker will fit right in there. And we'll tell you, it's for a true 6.5, not a 6 3/4 or an oversized 6.5. Anything too big won't fit in the hole. For that, you're gonna wanna go with the Metro version. We're going ahead and we're working on the box. Let's take a look at that. So we have dual voice coil 4 ohm drivers. There's a set here, there's a set here. Now what we need is this to be a 2 ohm load on each side so we can get a 1 ohm load at the amplifier. So we have our speaker cups that these came with. We went ahead and soldered on 2 groups of wires here, shrink wrap, taped it up a bit. Now we've already got one in the box. We found with these Rhino line boxes, they don't sit all that well, so they tend to leak. So we've gone ahead and filled in the hole that the cup was in with hot glue so that there won't be any air leakage anywhere around it. So now we're just gonna go ahead and get them screwed back into the box. The box is all set and done. We're gonna go ahead and set this aside and grab the 2 little amplifiers and open them up and take a look at them. So what are we doing?
Sounding. We're gonna pull this panel.
Yep.
Because the box it's really tight. We're gonna pull it out, sounding in the inside of this panel. Yeah, it wanna work really good.
do this behind the seat like this, make sure, it's not even a question, make sure you put grills on the speakers. Otherwise, you're on your own. You're gonna have holes in them. So grills on the speakers, it's a total must. So these are the two amplifiers we're gonna do. Now, the funny thing is right here where it says actual size. So the box's logo is the actual size of the amplifier on this particular one. And that's the amplifier there. Each one of them comes with a burst certificate. So this is the 750.1. This one at 1 ohm, 1% THD is putting out 967 watts. Now it comes with the cool startup disc, and the reason why it comes with this is because this essentially has a DD1 built into it. We have the instructions on how to actually use it, which we'll talk about later. And then it comes with our input plug right here. So on the bottom of the amplifier, it talks about this harness here. It has high level or low level. So if you want to use it as low level, you can simply just cut off the RCAs and then use the standard gray white combination. So it has white, white, black, gray, gray, black. Use it as a high level input. It has an input for the remote subwoofer volume control. It does not come with one. Power and speaker terminals unplug and come right out. On the top of the amplifier, you have the input level control. You have your clip light indicators, input output. You have your, of course, punch EQ, and then the crossover frequency, and then a infrasonic filter. That's basically a subsonic filter. That's a high pass crossover for the amplifier. All right, let's take a look at the 4-channel amp. Now the burst certificate for this says a total power of 553 watts at 2 ohm. We're not going to be running it at 2 ohm, so we know we're going to get considerably less than that. Let's check this actual size thing. It's pretty close. It's pretty close. It's actually maybe it. Yeah. No, I'd say actual size. Cool. So this one actually comes with the RCA adapters for line level, front and rear. On the front, it has basically the same settings. You have your input, you have your clip in, clip out lights, and you have a clip out light for channels 3 and 4. You have your punch EQ. You have a 2-channel, 4-channel mode selector. You have variable frequencies between 50 and 250, and also high pass or low pass with the power light down here in the corner. So these plug in here as your outputs, and then it has the same power plug as sub amp. Now also on the back, it has what the lights do. So if you have any troubleshooting, so while this amp is screwed down, if the lights aren't doing what they're supposed to, you can unscrew the amplifier, flip it over, and check it here. Because it's not anywhere on this. So we got these two guys that are going to sit like this. My guess is we're probably going to run just one 4-gauge to it with a distribution block. So we're going to have to hide these underneath the seat and also these underneath the seat. So to make all this fit, we're going to go ahead and use this Stinger distribution block here. This one's kind of nice because it's just 2 wires. It'll take a 4-gauge input, it has 2 8-gauge outputs. It also has a 0 to 2 4-gauge if you need be, but we just need it for the 8-gauge, and it's nice and tiny. Then we're going to have some Stinger 8-gauge power wire, and we have a Stinger 4-gauge power kit. Now as far as the RCAs, we don't know. I'm thinking we might just need some 9-footers. I don't think it needs to be any longer than that because like we said, all this is going underneath the passenger seat. So now what we need to do is go ahead and head over to the car, get the passenger front seat up so that we can get to that amplifier, figure out what kind of panel we're going to make to mount this stuff, and get to wiring it up. Alright, so we got a couple air fresheners here, packet of ketchup, and I don't know what that is. Alright, so this guy right here is the factory amplifier. We want to go ahead and get the cover off of it. Now we'll go ahead and set this over on the workbench because this is what we'll use to make our template so that we can fit all our stuff underneath here so we know where our screw points are. So we've actually done this car before. We've shown it here on the channel. So we have a nice set of notes as far as what everything is here. We do need to go grab a couple of wiring harnesses though so that we can plug into this. So we need a BHA 1761 and we need a BHA 7992. We're gonna run next door and grab those. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the 1761. For that, just go ahead and pull all the pins out. Now keep in mind, you don't have to do this. This is just more more of a personal preference. I want the colors to match. There's wires in the holes. All right, so in the 1761, the only wires that it's using are the speaker wires. We have positive on top for 2, so that's going to be our grays. And right next to that will be 1, which is the driver's front door. For those of you that aren't familiar with how we break it up, is the driver's front door is 1, passenger front door is 2, 3, and then 4. And then that'll go white, gray, green, purple. All right, so the 1761 harness is all set. Let's move on to the 7992. We're gonna repeat the same process and remove all the wiring. First up on the list is going to be the 1 tweeter. Negatives are on the bottom, so go ahead and clip that in. Then it goes 2, and then on the other side, it's gonna start with 3, negative on the bottom. And next to that is 4. And for those of you that are gonna retain the rear tweeters, the next 2 openings on the harness are going to be negative, positive for 4. And then the next to the gray is going to be the rear tweeter. They're again negative on the bottom, positive on the top. We're not retaining the tweeters in the rear door because they're up way too high and too close to the driver's ear. All right, so we have our 2 harnesses all set and ready to go. Now what we're gonna do is go over in the car. We're gonna tone these to make sure that they're the right speakers and make sure that my notes were correct for this car. So let's head over to the car. All right, so the 1761 plug first should be passenger, driver, driver's tweeter. Now the one thing you need to do when you're doing an install like this is there's a center channel in this car, and how it works is it takes a signal from the driver's tweeter and the passenger tweeter and sums them into one speaker. You have to disconnect that speaker. It has to come out of the equation, otherwise your amp's going to do strange things, and if you're just hooking up a radio, it'll really do bad things. If you want to run a center channel, run your own wire up to the center channel. There are no wires here for it. All right, so that was part of the hard part there of getting that. So now what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and remove this floorboard here. There's this nice factory ground right here, but the way it is in, it's wrapped around the seat wires. So we want to go ahead and move that. Now we can use this ground point also for our amplifiers. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to go grab our equipment and we're going to see what kind of mount we need to make to fit all this stuff. So originally I wanted to use these factory bolts to hold everything in place here. Looking at the way I want to build this, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm actually going to use these rear seat bolts to hold everything in place. I'm just going to build a board that comes from here to here with a U here, and then we can mount the crossovers here. We can reroute these over to this area here. I might put some spacers on the amps to lift them up a little bit so the RCAs can go underneath as opposed to wrapping them around, or I might lift up the crossovers, this one in particular, if I lifted this one up. Either way, the basic shape of what I need is pretty much laid out. Let's get a tape measure and then we'll go cut some plastic. Alright, so we have a basic shape and design. Let's go cut this thing up. Drill 2 holes here for the seat cleats to go through, as well as round up some of these corners, and then we'll round the whole thing off. Alright, so the reason why we're drilling these holes so big is because there's washers underneath the seat that actually hold it up, and I want them to go through this. Alright, let's router these corners off. Alright, you guys like to ask, by the way, this is 1/4 inch ABS. So it's a little bit harder to work with than the Sentra, but it's real rigid, works good underneath the seats. Let's take it in and do all our test fitting. fits the way we want it. We are going to make one modification. We're going to add a leg here to screw into this bolt so that it doesn't flop around like this. Other than that, we're good. We can take this over to the bench and we can start to get these things wired up. We don't need to lengthen these. These are all gonna fit where they need to go. Let's just head over to the bench. So we are gonna put some spacers up underneath the amplifiers to raise them up off this floor like this, so that we have room to run the RCAs up underneath the amplifier so that they don't hang out around the back here. So I've gone ahead and cut some 1/2" pieces. So we have our basic layout. This is how it's gonna go. Let's go ahead and hit this with the time lapse as we wire this whole bad boy up. So really all you have to do to remove this radio is remove the air conditioning controls. Now there is two 10mm bolts up underneath here that hold this in place. The amps are in. We added this extra bracket here like we talked about, so that is screwed into the factory bolt there. Power wire snaked around, ran up. It is just waiting to go through the firewall. We use that factory ground point right here to ground the amplifiers. Gone ahead and taped this up like we talked about. Plug them in, no wires are cut. Everything is just, we're getting ready to drop the seat back down. So this is all set and ready to go. Oh yeah, we also ran the RCAs up into the dash, so they're done. We just ran the sub wire to the back. It's right there. We're gonna go ahead and split that off to two 16 gauges next. But first we're gonna go ahead and put the seat back down and just kind of hand tighten the bolts into place. All right, now we're to the point where we're going to go ahead and get the radio wired up so that we can get it into the dash and finish this install. We got a bunch of parts though we need to talk about first. First off, let's talk about the antenna adapter. For this, we're gonna use the Best Kits BAA 44. Now, this antenna adapter here comes with the regular antenna that's going to plug into the back of the radio. This is the special Toyota version, and it's got this blue wire right here. This is the amplified antenna turn-on. Anytime you use one of these that has that, go ahead and plug this into the car and see if there's a wire there. Now, in this case, there is no wire for an amplified antenna, so we can just go ahead and remove this from the harness so we don't have to deal with it. We'll set this aside. Next, we have the USB. We want to retain the factory USB. For that, we're going to be using the Pack Audio USB TY1. If you're using all iData, they make an adapter for this too. We just stock this one. Toyota makes two different versions of this cable. One has a brown end, one has a gray end. This one uses the gray end in the car and they match. And it's also, this one is more square. So we're gonna use this guy. Next, we have the TO2. This is a box of different style antenna adapters for the car. What this is designed to retain is your Sirius XM, as well as the GPS antenna. Depending on which manufacturer you have, this one here will do the Sirius XM. It's universal, it just plugs into the Sirius XM tuner. And then you have these two guys here. The green one is for Pioneer, the gray one is for Kenwood. Plug this in, plug it into the back of the radio, and you can use the car's GPS antenna. You don't have to run the Kenwood. Next, we have the TO2. This is going to be the smart harness for the car. The first thing that pops out of this is the backup camera retention. This guy right here. This guy is designed to plug into the RR. This is going to plug into the back of the radio. Next, we have an OBD2 connector that's going to need to run down and plug in. And then we have the main harness here. And there's a bunch of adapters for this. Now naturally what you want to do, like always, is go plug this into the car and make sure that it is the right harness. We're going to go ahead and do that real quick. So we do have the right harness, all our stuff plugs in, that's a positive. Now on this, we have a bunch of stuff going on here that we just need to kind of figure out what it is. And for that, we're going to use the magical instructions. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and open the actual RR box. Go ahead and take the main unit out. Now we'll grab these instructions and we're going to go ahead and turn to page 4. And what we want to look for is what wires are right here. These are the wires that are in these bags. And this guy is this, which is H, which is the main data connector. It's in the bag that comes with the power and the USB. This other stuff we're not going to need for this install. What you want to do though is go ahead and take this, plug it into the H hole so you don't lose it. This is the cable that you're going to lose and you're going to hate yourself for. for it. The rest of this stuff we're not going to need. We'll just go ahead and put it in the box here. According to this, we have the backup camera, which is right here. So we have our aux input here. We're going to need a RCA to aux adapter to retain those. And then up here we have these guys, these RCAs. So if it had the JBL system, we'd leave these intact and just plug it in. We don't have that system, so we're going to cut them off. So now what we want to do is just go ahead and, like always, remove all this tape so that we can make this harness our own. Now this doesn't have rear seat entertainment or anything like that, so we can go ahead and remove the video aux RCA. We're not going to need it. Alright, so now what we want to do is just pretty this up, solder the wires together. On the Kenwood, there is a couple wires that we're not going to use. This has these two green wires here that say cam plus and minus. We're not using those because they're for a dedicated Kenwood camera that we're not using because we have the factory. This doesn't have a power antenna, so we don't need to use the blue wire that's on here. Purple white we will be using. That's going to be our backup wire. And then the speaker wires we're not going to be using either because this we're putting in an amplifier, so there's no reason for us to hook those up. This has the steering wheel wire, which is the blue yellow. We're not going to need that because that is going to be done through the data connection here. We can cap that off. Looking back at what we just talked about, we're not going to need any of the 8 speaker wires. That's these guys right here. We're not going to need the steering wheel control wire. We're not going to need those greens, and we're not going to need the blue wire. It might be easier to say what we are going to be using, which is the black ground, the red accessory, the yellow memory, the orange-white illumination, the blue-white amp turn-on, and the purple-white reverse trigger. That's it. That's all we're going to be hooking up on this guy. As far as this is concerned, it has all those wires like the speaker wires. We're not going to be using those. We're not going to be using these over here. We can just remove them if we want. That's entirely up to you. You can tape them up, cap them off, but what we're going to do now, shoot to a quick time lapse of us wiring this bad boy up. Our harness is all set and ready to go. We have the car side here, brain side here. We have our remote turn on right here, and then all the stuff that's gonna plug into the back of the radio. It's in a nice T. We have all this stuff all set and ready to go here. So now I'm gonna go into the car. I'm gonna get all this plugged in. Last thing that I'm going to do is plug in this guy. So what I'm gonna do right now before I take this into the car is go ahead and unplug this brain, because this actually all gets plugged in last. So you have to plug in the radio, you have to plug in all its connections, and then you plug this guy in. But we can get all this into the car, so let's head into the car. Now we can proceed to step 3, which is to plug in the RR. So essentially this needs to be last. And I like to hook up the main power last as well. So we'll plug in everything. All right. So this thing is going to flash red a bunch of times, and then finally it will go ahead and flash green. And then that should be done. We're gonna go ahead and do our setup here. All right, so it has factory guidelines, so we're gonna go ahead and make sure we turn the parking guidelines off, turn the demo off. As far as OEM, you have vehicle features, vehicle settings. We can always come back if there's nothing that we need to deal with right now. We can change those later. We can select finish, we'll select agree. Pressure, there we go, so there's our tire pressure. Looks like he's got one low tire over here. Wow. I'm gonna put some air in his tire.
So now we have 38, 38, 39, 40.
Okay. Fixed this tire pressure problem. Let's go to navigation. It's amazing how this can grab navigation inside of here.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. All right, so really at this point, if Fernando's still hooking the battery up, I just wanted to make sure that the basic features here worked. Volume up works, volume down works. At this point, we're just gonna go ahead and set this up in the dash, and we'll move on to actually testing everything else. All right, so we're just gonna plug this in. We're not gonna actually snap this in place yet. We wanna wait until we're done doing all our testing. That way we don't have to pull this back off. You come out of the firewall over here, zip tie the wire up to the firewall, comes across. We have a nice mount right here for the fuse holder. It's like a display just for the fuse holder. Connected to the battery, all good. So we have all the speakers moving in the right direction. We did have one that was wrong. It's okay. It could be anywhere. Could have been down here at the amplifier. Could have been over where it was over in the door. No big deal. That's why we do the polarity check. So we're good there. Now they're all moving the right direction. Now we're gonna go ahead with the setup for this. Like we said, these have like a DD1 built into them. So we have the disc, we have in the player. We're gonna go ahead and start tuning it now. Now when you're going to set these up, make sure you unplug the speakers. You don't need the speakers hooked up to do this. You also need to make sure that if you have the bass knob hooked up, you go ahead and disconnect that. Set your radio to flat, and now we'll go ahead and play track 5. We're not getting any clip on the input for the 40 hertz. We didn't think we would. Now we'll go ahead and go to track 7, and we're not getting any input clip either. We've dynoed the Kenwoods. They don't clip. We're all good there. Now we're gonna go ahead and for the subwoofer, we're gonna try -10, so we're gonna put it on track 13. Lights up blue. All right, we got red there. Now we're going to turn up the bass EQ. So we'll go ahead and turn this down. There we go. Because I want some bump to come out of this. All right, now we're gonna go and play track 11. Go ahead and turn up the front. Oh, that's clipping. Our blue is good. We're not gonna be using the EQ on this. We're gonna go ahead and set our crossovers and turn on our high pass filters. We're gonna set for 80. We're gonna set the rear for, all right. So now we have the amp set up for clip. We can go ahead and listen to it, see how it sounds, and do any final adjustments to the crossover and the gains.
Nice mid-bass. Let's go 56.
Roadkill, fast rings, T2s, sweet, very sweet.
Yeah, these tweeters, they are amazing.
I like the way it sounds, I'm happy.
Me too, me too.
Speakers are doing what we want, so kudos to that. It's late, it's dark, I wanna go home. You wanna go home?
I wanna go home.
So this is a one-off today, we spent the whole day working on this.
Yep.
What can I say?
Done.
Done, and on to the next one.